Thanks, Joseph. Good afternoon, everyone. So what I'm going to be talking to you today is really kind of to address this statement. So many of you probably have a rough idea of what FME Cloud is. It's a way to deploy FME Server in the cloud, and we look after things for you. But this is a statement I kind of hear sometimes. FME Cloud is just the hosted version of FME Server. It is the hosted version of FME Server, and that brings a lot of benefits. But there are many other benefits beyond that you can gain by leveraging, by using the cloud. And that's what I'm going to talk about to you today. So here are the 5 kind of key reasons that I'm going to talk about that the cloud enables you to do. So innovate faster, and focus your resources on just the business process side of things, maximize uptime, strengthen security, and save money. So let's start on increasing the rate of innovation within your team. So when you deploy FME Server, sometimes it can take days, sometimes months. We had one customer, a state down in America, and so they took about 18 months to deploy FME Server. They got the hardware, which took about 6 months. They got everything set up, and then the roof leaked from above, a pipe split into the data room, ruined all the hardware, took another 6 months to procure more hardware. I mean, it's an edge case, but you get the idea. It can take a long time sometimes to deploy server. What we're going to show you is how you can dramatically reduce that down to a matter of minutes in provisioning capacity via FME Cloud. So this is kind of the workflow, the scenario you go through when you install FME Server yourself. It's the same for both. You build your integration workflow, you build your workspaces, then you're going to download server. And the key thing is really acquiring and configuring the hardware. You need to be worrying about the OS, you need to be worrying about the network, you need to be worrying about security, SSL, you need to plan for disaster recovery on premises. And all of these things, especially if you're a really small company or a team, it's likely just beyond the scope of what you're able to do. So probably what you're going to do is express install, forget about it and hope it all works out. And that does work to an extent, but with cloud, we give you a whole bunch of things and all you have to do is just click sign up, and it takes about 8 minutes to launch an instance. So let me show you what that looks like. If I go, this is the cloud interface, so I've signed up to FME Cloud. It takes a couple of minutes to sign up. You don't need a credit card to try FME Cloud, and we give you $250 free credit. So you can basically try FME Cloud with 0 risk. So this is a safe software account. I'm just going to switch to my own FME Cloud account. You can have multiple cloud accounts now on one email. And I'm going to launch an instance. So this is our launch wizard. So let's launch a production instance today. Feeling flush. Okay, so this is kind of the URL of the instance. So maybe normally it's localhost or the server name. What we're going to do is give you an endpoint, a URL up there on the public cloud, on the public web. Which version of server do you want? You can choose last year's release if you want. We only maintain the previous release. You can choose the beta or the current build. So the beta's updated as the new betas come in. We've got an automated build pipeline that builds everything for you. So you'll see essentially the new betas in here as they come on the website. Let's launch a beta. Now we need to choose our hardware, the fun part. So how big an instance do you want? From 2 cores all the way up to 16 cores. Now just one thing to be clear here, because this has confused people a few times. On FME Cloud, you don't pay for the number of engines. You pay for the hardware. So you pay for the instance type, and then you can put whatever you want in terms of number of engines on that instance. So this is really good because sometimes you want 1 engine per core when you're doing like big raster processing or LiDAR jobs. You really need 1 engine per core, but sometimes you might just be doing like a Salesforce integration, sync, or some small little jobs pulling data from sensors, and then you can fit like 6 engines on 1 core. So just remember the pricing is per machine, not per engines. So let's launch, this is a production, so we're going to launch an 8-core machine, 32 gig of RAM, and we're going to launch it up in Canada. We have a data center up here now. So under the hood, we're launching into AWS, and that's what I was talking about this morning. Soon in here, you'll be able to choose a cloud provider as well. So you'll be able to choose Azure, IBM, Google Cloud, and so there'll be that level of flexibility as well. But for now, we're in Amazon. How big a disk do you want things? If you're pulling down terabytes of data from S3 satellite imagery every day, then you probably need a little bit of disk space. But most of the time, actually, you don't need that much disk space. So security updates I'll talk about later, as with alerts as well. I'll talk about those later. So once you've chosen the hardware, you've got everything set up, we come to this page, and this just kind of gives you an idea of the rough monthly cost. So remember, this is a 8-core machine with 32 gig of RAM, but you can also tweak it. Maybe you only want to run it 10 hours a month. You don't necessarily want to run it all month, right? Maybe you want to just run it for 1 week a month. So this is just a kind of a pricing calculator in here just to help you visualize how much things are going to cost. So let's launch this, and then hopefully this should be ready for us at the end of the presentation. The next thing is we want to give you access to the very best technologies to let you innovate as quick as possible. We've had the best. There's a presentation later on showing everything Claude and Pascal and the team have done in optimizing and tuning and configuring FME Server. I think this is the most stable FME Server deployment in the world. We've been iterating on it full time for 4 years now nearly, right? So it's extremely stable. All the stack has the latest versions of all components. We're also upgrading the operating system, all of the libraries on the Ubuntu deployment as well. We keep everything up to date. So the next thing, focus resources, and this one's really key. We want to completely remove the overhead associated with managing the FME server. Why do you want to worry about doing ops? Why do you want to worry about patching operating systems and uptime? That doesn't add value to your business. You want to build workspaces and workflows, and you want to deploy them and run them. That's what you want to do. So we give you tools. What happens if your disk's running out on-prem? Well, you have to go and call IT or switch the disk out. Here, all you're going to do is you're going to click on the instance, and you're going to resize the disk. And it's as simple as choosing that, clicking expand disk, and it takes a couple of minutes. What happens if you look at your monitoring and you realize, this one's idling, but let's say your load's extremely high and you need to quickly update the instance size to a bigger instance with more cores? Well, all you need to do is action and resize instance, and you can choose an instance type. And we'll switch out the hardware for you underneath and leave all of your FME workflows on server completely intact. That takes about 2 minutes to do that. You can go up and down. So that flexibility, is really handy. It's all just in the web UI, and you can also automate everything that's in the dashboard through the API as well. So you could be monitoring a server via the notification service, looking at the load, and when the load gets too high, you could automatically change the size of the instance, do things like this. So we don't have true kind of cluster scalability yet, where you can endlessly scale, but we do have this flexibility in terms of you shifting between different instance sizes. The next, upgrade made easy. Again, if you want to upgrade an FME server on premises, maybe you need new hardware, or it's a pain. Here it takes about 10-15 minutes. You're going to launch a new cloud instance, back up FME server, restore the FME server to the new instance, and then throw away the old instance. Instances really become disposable. You can just move them around, shut them down, start them up again. It's much more flexible. Yeah, this is really the thing. We want you to spend time on your workflows, not administration and ops. Maybe you have the capacity to administration and ops, maybe you don't. To be honest, the first wave of FME Cloud customers haven't been the huge multinational corporations. They've mostly been startups or smaller sized businesses who are moving all of their infrastructure to the cloud, and they couldn't have FME Server on-prem at all. So this allows them to access FME Server in a cost-effective way. Third, maximize uptime. It links in a little bit to the last point. Often organizations, they don't have the capacity to do active-active or active-passive deployments with load balancers and all of this on premises and all of the monitoring. So with cloud, what we give you is, firstly, we give you the stable deployment that we've iterated on for years now. And secondly, we give you disaster recovery tools. So just before I delve into the tools we give you, the thing that I want to kind of emphasize here is this shared responsibility model. So we are responsible as Safe Software for a whole bunch of the infrastructure that you usually have to worry about on premises. So operating system, hardware failure, networking, if any of that goes down or there's an issue with it, that's on us when you're using cloud, not on you. The only thing as a customer, and an MSP is a managed service provider, which we're launching later in the year, you're responsible for the FME server application uptime. So what I mean by this is, making sure that the instance is running, so that you don't run out of disk, or you're not overloading the instance, or you're not spiking the network load to cause a bottleneck. Things like this, things out of our control that you as a customer are going to be performing tasks on the instance, and we don't know what you're doing. We have no insight whatsoever into the cloud instance. It's a complete black box because we have to have it that way so it's secure for you guys. So this is FME Server on premises, and yes, you can set your own tools up on the server to do monitoring, but what we give you out of the box on FME Server is just kind of, it's at the job level. When a job fails, you can be alerted. When a migration fails as well, which is more of a rare edge case, to be honest, you can be alerted. But really, it's about the jobs failing. And that's useful, but what happens if the whole server fails? Then the jobs don't even run. So you're just not going to know anything. It's just going to go down and you won't know about it. So on FME Cloud, what we've done is giving you essentially infrastructure monitoring out of the box. So you can set alerts and triggers on the network, the CPU, the disk, the memory, and you can get notifications when the hardware tier or the infrastructure tier has an issue, which is extremely powerful because it allows you to do really a kind of complex infrastructure management just through the dashboard. So let's just take we're going to create a server load alert, actually, not a CPU alert. So you can see already my other instance I just launched is already running. So what was that, 5 minutes or something? So I'm going to switch to our production safe software account. And there's one instance in here. Every time you open Workbench, it sends data back to this cloud instance to do all of remember the graphs this morning, talking about usage of FME. So this goes to this production instance here. So you can see there's a decent amount of load on here. We've got 8 gigabytes of RAM. Sometimes we're spiking up to 6 gig. There's a decent amount of server load on here as well. So I just want to just put an alert in because this could be, we might have an issue when we launch a new release and everyone's opening Workbench. We might need to scale up this instance potentially. So I'm going to create an alert here, create a new alert, and we'll call it, it's high load that we might need to act on. So we want to create an alert on server load. Before I do that, so who do you want to notify? So there's usually 2 groups of things or people you want to notify. One is you want to notify a human being. You want to wake a human being up, or you want to put an email in their inbox so they know about it. The second group is you want to notify another application or a program or a system to trigger another workflow somewhere else. So the notification groups here, you can actually create, I'll just open this here. You can create alerts going to any of these. So if I create a notification service, you can send alerts to email, PagerDuty, which is kind of exactly that. It's like having a pager on your hip, but it lights your phone up. Slack, we all know what Slack is, or Webhook. So Webhook's the one where you can essentially start to integrate notifications into other applications and automate things. So let's see. So server load. So yes, when it goes above, well, if load goes above 2, we've got potentially an issue. And I'm going to do it for 20 minutes because I don't want it if I get a spike and it recovers, I don't want to know about that. I only want to know about prolonged load. So we could even do it up to 60 minutes. So let's save that, and it's easy as that. So if load goes over 2 for more than 20 minutes, I'll receive an email, and I could do something about it. So it's quite powerful and quite simple. Disaster recovery, so automated backups and one-click rollback. For every instance that's running, if I click on instances here, we're backing that up for you every day, and it's encrypted at rest as well. So if we can go backups here, you see we're backing up every day for you, and we keep the last up to 10 days. You can modify the number of backups we keep here. You can also pin a backup. So let's say you've spent ages getting the perfect FME server instance. You've got it just how you want. Before you roll it out to production where someone's going to mess things up, you want to create a nice snapshot of it. So what you can do is you just choose the backup, you create a snapshot, and what that does is it stores the instance somewhere else separately, kind of indefinitely, like it's storing an image, and on a future date you can launch instances from that image. So that's a powerful model as well for, making sure you can roll back and you're in control. So the fourth thing, this is probably the most contentious statement, strengthen security. Run the most secure deployment of FME server without lifting a finger. I'll argue that. Now, if you are a huge multinational organization with endless resources at your fingertips and like some kind of federal agency, then sure, maybe you have a more secure deployment on premises. But for most companies, I feel, this is a fair statement, and I'll explain why. So again, even on the security side, we have a shared responsibility. We're relying on AWS, our provider, to do a level of the security. So they're looking after network security. If someone tries to do a DDoS attack, like where someone overloads your server with network requests, they handle that. They'll block that IP. They do all that for you. So we don't have to worry about that. Physical environmental security. Their data centers, it's like military-grade security. Good luck someone going and plugging a USB like they might be able to do in your own data center. It's extremely secure. Then we've got our level. So we're responsible for the operating system security, database security, network security, vulnerability management, patching and testing, and support access. All you're responsible for is access control into the server, which we'll talk about, and the FME server security. That's more like who's going to gain access to the server. It's not configuring things like SSH and SSL security and things like that. This is, again, a contentious statement, especially if you're in Europe, but AWS is probably more secure than your data center, likely, right? They've got 50, 60, however many thousand engineers working on security at Amazon. The economies of scale. This isn't the most sharp graphic, apologies for that, but this is all of their compliance. So just to pick a few out, I don't even know what a lot of these mean, to be honest, but they apply to your local markets. We've got EU-US Privacy Shield, EU Data Protection Directive, all the ISO standard certifications. Amazon is spending a fortune on this because they know they have to reassure people that the cloud is secure to gain confidence. So the only real thing to say here is there's a lot of conceptions about, oh, I can't use the cloud in the UK, or I can't use it here because of this data privacy law or that data privacy law. I'm not an expert on all of it. I can't be. But rather than having an assumption, just go have a look. Because it might have been the case 5, 6 years ago, but things are changing so fast. They're working with the EU, they're working with the Canadian government to get all of these laws and regulations passed. So rather than having an assumption about it, just go and have a look and double check and be sure. That's all I'll say on that. Yeah, so here's a few other things. Everything's encrypted at rest. We use SSL, single tenancy model. So crucially, that means when you launch this cloud instance, it's your own instance. We're not sharing that piece of hardware with anyone else. It's just yours. It's not a multi-tenant model. We have, against all of our infrastructure, we have software running all the time to check for vulnerabilities. So we use external tools that run scanning against everything to check things are secure. Really what I want you to kind of just be, there's a security white paper as well, but it's really just, you don't have to worry about it. We're taking the effort here to do things, so you don't have to worry about it. The one thing which is neat is we have, if you go on security under an instance, you can configure which ports are open and closed. So you can close ports and you have control over the entry and exit points into your instance. So what that means is we have some customers who they launch a cloud instance and they're actually connecting to a database on premises. So they punch a hole in their firewall and that points to the IP of the cloud instance, and they lock down that port to the IP as well, because you can say, you know, I want port 80 to be tied to this IP, and then you can put an IP in. So you can tie the entrance and exit into the instance down to specific IPs, and you can be in complete control. So that's another point to add. Patching as well, again, I've already covered this. You know, you can set automatic patching up, and so that's at the Ubuntu level. We're just going to apply all the patches that Ubuntu released for the operating system. You don't have to do anything. You might need to restart now and again, but that's about it. So the fifth one, you know, save money, and this isn't because FME Cloud is necessarily cheaper than FME Server. It's about the same price as FME Server, but actually it includes the hardware as well. So if you spec it over 5 years, but remember that's kind of mentality is based on 1 engine per core. But if you start putting 20 engines over 3 cores instead, then you get more flexibility and more value there. But there's 2 pricing models on FME Cloud. This is how it works. So the first one is, this is the one where you're not going to be running the instance all the time. You're going to bring the instance up 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week, 1 hour a day, whatever you want to do a job, and then you're going to shut it down. For that, you're going to be charged hourly. If you have an FME Cloud instance that you stand up for the whole year, then you want to use the annual rate, the one-time payment to us. And what that is that's about 40% cheaper than the on-demand rate if you ran that all year. So it's a significant discount. So they're the 2 pricing models, but how can we leverage that to really keep costs down? So first is, you know, minimize excess capacity. We're giving you all these monitoring tools. We just helped a client the other day downgrade the instance. We looked at all of their monitoring and said, well, you know, you've got quite a lot of slack here. You're not really hitting the maximum load. Let's downgrade. So you can use all of the data to help you optimize what instance size you want to use. You can't do that on premises because you've already paid, you guessed up front, right? You made an assumption, this is what you think my load's going to be, and you guessed up front. Here you don't have to guess up front. You can start small and you can scale. Harnessing on demand. To be honest, this is where people have really innovated on FME Cloud with leveraging that hourly pricing model. So the first thing is FME Cloud schedules. Bring the instance online exactly when you need it. I've seen a few talks doing this during the UC. So if you go in schedules in FME Cloud, you can create a schedule to start and stop your instance, or just to start or stop or restart. So let's do start and stop. So I'm going to do this, I'm going to do a weekly, but only Monday and Tuesday. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do, that's all week. I'm going to do daily, but I'm going to select the days. So I'm going to run this instance on Monday and Tuesday, and I'm going to run it between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. That's when people are in the office. So that instance is going to come up for just those 2 days every week, between 8 and 4, and then it's going to shut down. And you're only going to be charged for those 7 hours. So that's schedules. A lot of people are using these. The next is the API. So this is programmatically launching and stopping an instance. So this was the weather network, and what they were doing is processing a huge amount of satellite data. When the satellite data came down, it got dropped into an S3 bucket, and what happens, you can configure, apologies for those that don't know AWS terms, but S3 is it's like a big data storage where you can store files. So the files are being placed on S3, and when these files are placed on S3, a message gets sent to SQS, and then they have a piece of code that's looking at the SQS queue, and when there's so many messages in the SQS queue, they fire up FME Cloud instances via the API. So they were firing up 5 enterprise instances for 2 hours, and they did processing, and then they shut everything down. And what that meant they could do is they could do about 60 hours of processing in like 2 hours. So that's when you're starting to get really kind of innovative with using the API. Yeah, the other thing is this flexible pricing model makes FME Cloud a really good tool for proof of concepts. And we see a lot of people who own FME Server, but they're using cloud as well. They come in here, they launch the latest 2017.1, they trial something, and then they show it to the boss. It's that kind of workflow. So just think of cloud. Maybe you can use it for this in combination with FME Server. Limitations. Yes, so limitations, it's on Linux, is FME Cloud. So there is some format limitations. However, that's getting much better. SQL Server is now supported on Linux. We've got JDBC drivers. We can hit almost all formats. The big one we can't do is Esri geodatabase. Not the file geodatabase, Esri geodatabase. And that's because you need an Esri license for that. As you know, you need the Arc objects code, and we can't ship any of that. So if you're doing Esri geodatabase stuff, then you can't do it on FME Cloud. The other limitation, if you have 10 terabytes of data on premises and you need to process it, probably not a good fit, because you're going to have to bring it all up and down over the network. So that's the other major limitation. Yeah, so thank you for your time. Yeah, it's been great talking to you all this week about cloud. If anyone has any questions, I think we've got a few minutes. Yeah.
We run a lot of our infrastructure in AWS already, and I'm just wondering if something like this would be available as a base image in AWS Marketplace, so we can build custom containers inside of OpenAPI.
Yeah, so the question was, is there they run their own AWS infrastructure, is there any other way to deploy an FME server within AWS? And the answer is yes, and Wei Song's just sat behind you, he's helped out a lot on this. You can actually get a Docker container now it's on Docker Hub, right? And you can use that to deploy into your own infrastructure. The problem is at the moment you have to buy FME server. You can't access the billing and any of the hourly pricing at the moment. But what we're thinking is, if we went back to the slide this morning, what we want you to maybe be able to do in the future is deploy from the FME Cloud dashboard into your own VPC and leverage that hourly billing. But right now it's quite easy actually to deploy into your own infrastructure with Docker. Any other questions? Yeah.
So file geodatabases are supported?
Yeah, the question is file geodatabases, they're absolutely fine, yeah. SQLite works, yeah. We've got Oracle client shipped on there, we have all of the GPS Babel, so we're shipping all of the things we're legally allowed to ship. So yeah, almost all formats, to be honest, the big ones are good. Okay, one more question and then time's up.
So with FME Cloud, maximum memory size supported is 30 GB. Is it possible to expand it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, talk to me. We can go as big as you want. We'll have to create custom pricing models, but we've got the code and everything set up. You can go really big if you want.
Because in the past we have not been able to use FME Cloud, so only that.
Oh wow, that's a great problem for me to have. So yeah, talk to me. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Joseph, for that. I'm around for the rest of the day if you want to grab me. Thank you very much.